All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we're tackling a topic that I know is close to a lot of your hearts. How do we raise sons with, unshakable self-esteem?
Such a big question, right? And luckily, there's so much good research coming out now that's really shining a light on what actually helps, versus all that old school advice that, well, maybe didn't always work so well.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm pumped to dive into this. We've got some seriously fascinating stuff from this child psychologist. He spent years just watching how boys operate, like hours of footage, real life stuff, not just like theories in a book.
And that's what I think makes this deep dive so cool, right? We're not just talking the abstract here. We're getting into the nuts and bolts of how boys communicate, how they learn, and yeah, how they build that sense of self.
Love it. Okay, so first big thing that jumped out at me, this expert, let's call him Dr. Cho, talks about how boys, they act up in ways that drive us nuts, but he says it's often a cry for recognition.
Totally. It might not be the most effective way they go about it, but think about it. Bragging, taking crazy risks, even just being straight up defiant, it's almost like they're saying, hey, look at me, I matter.
It's so true, right? And Dr. Cho, he's got this anecdote that really hit home for me. He describes this kid who's drawing with his mom, and the boy, he's insistent on making this giant, huge police car, and then he makes his mom draw this tiny, wimpy little monster.
And when you really break that down, it says so much about a boy's need to feel strong, powerful, in control. It's not even just about the drawing itself. It's about how that drawing makes him feel about himself.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, knowing that, how do we as parents shift gears?
Mm.
Go from seeing those behaviors as just problems to actually getting what's behind them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's all about realizing that before we go and correct a boy's behavior, we've got to address that deep down need for recognition. It's like, think of it as an emotional tank, You got to fill that tank up before anything else can really happen.
I love that. It's
Well,
like
yeah.
if your car's out of gas, it doesn't matter how much you want it to go, it's not going anywhere,
Yeah.
right? Same with the kid. If their emotional tank is empty, they're just not going to be open to learning or listening to us.
100%. And Dr. Cho gives this great example. This kid, he was causing chaos in class, like all the time. The teacher, she tried everything. Nothing worked.
Oh man, I need to know what happened. Did she just give up in the end?
Not at all. She had this like aha moment where she realized that she was so focused on correcting him that she was missing the bigger picture. She wasn't really seeing him. So she starts doing this thing where before she even addresses his behavior, she takes a minute to point out something positive, like his creativity or his potential.
Okay, so what happened? Did he suddenly turn into the perfect student?
Well, it wasn't instant magic or anything, but it was a real turning point. The kid, he felt seen, appreciated, and that made him actually want to behave better. It's like that whole filling the cup thing, right? You focus on the good stuff, their strengths, and suddenly they're much more open to hearing about areas where they can improve.
So it's not about ignoring the bad stuff. It's about the order we do things in. Fill the cup first, then guide.
Boom! You got it. And he's got another example that really drives this home. This boy, he's struggling with writing, like his spelling is a disaster, grammar's all over the place. But instead of zeroing in on all that negative stuff, Dr. Cho's like, hey, praise his creativity, praise the stories he's coming up with.
Yeah. It's like saying, dude, your imagination is off the charts. This story is awesome. Instead of, oh, your spelling needs work.
Exactly. It's that tiny shift that makes all the difference. By praising his strengths, you're giving him confidence, motivating him to work on the stuff where he's struggling. Way more positive, way more effective.
I'm sitting here thinking about how often we just jump right to the correction part, without taking a second to recognize what's good. I know I do it.
We all do. It's like it's programmed into us, right?
Yep.
Focus on what needs fixing. But this approach, it takes a real change in mindset, a shift from seeing the problems to seeing the potential. Welcome back, folks. Hope you're ready for round two. We're about to unpack some seriously practical communication strategies that can, totally change the game when it comes to connecting with your son.
Oh, I'm all about practical. Hit me with those strategies. Especially when it comes to the communication. I sometimes feel like, I don't know, I'm walking on eggshells.
I hear you. And Dr. Cho, he gets it. He says one of the biggest things we mess up on as parents is that we get so hung up on what a boy's doing wrong that we totally miss what he's trying to tell us.
So it's not just about reacting to the behavior. It's about understanding what's going on underneath.
Boom. It's like being a detective. You got to figure out the why behind the what. He gives this example, right? Imagine your son is playing rough with his little sister. Your instinct is to jump in and be like, hey, knock it off. You're gonna hurt her.
Oh, yeah, that's totally me. What's wrong with that, though? I mean, somebody's got to step in before someone gets hurt, right?
It's not that it's always wrong, but think about what's missing there. We haven't taken a second to figure out why he's being rough in the first place. Maybe he's frustrated, maybe he feels left out, maybe he just wants attention from his sister. Who knows?
So by jumping in so fast, we're basically like shutting down the communication before it even starts.
Right. It's like we're saying, hey, your feelings, they don't matter, only your actions do. And Dr. Cho, he suggests something completely different. Instead of going straight to the correction, start by just acknowledging how he's feeling. You could say something like, hey, I see you're having a tough time playing gently right now. What's up? You frustrated about something?
Whoa, okay, that feels so different.
Yeah.
I can already see how that would, like, open up the conversation instead of shutting it down.
And once he feels like you get him, you understand, he's way more likely to listen to what you have to say. It goes back to that whole emotional tank thing, right? By acknowledging his feelings, you're making a deposit, showing him that what he feels actually matters.
That is such a good point. We talk about this emotional tank all the time, but how often do we actually stop and ask ourselves, okay, am I filling this thing up right now? Or am I, like, running it on empty?
It's a big one, right? Like a boy who feels emotionally secure, he's going to be way more open to learning, to growing. But what about those situations where you got to set boundaries, right? Where it's not just about feelings, it's about, nope, not okay.
Yes, the balance. How do you do that? How do you hold that empathy, but still be the parent who's like, not happening?
It's all about clear, consistent communication. And this might surprise you, but Dr. Cho, he's all about direct language with boys, especially as they get older.
So less of the long explanations and more, like, straight to the point.
Yes. Think clear, simple, firm. But here's the thing. Focus on what they're doing, not on them as a person. So instead of, you're always such a mess, try, hey, can you put your toys away before dinner?
It's that whole attack the problem, not the person thing. It just feels so much more respectful. Probably less likely to get that whole defensive reaction.
And whenever you can, try to get them involved in setting the boundaries. So instead of like laying down the law, try saying, okay, we need a plan for screen time this week. What do you think?
I love that. It's not about giving up control. It's about showing them respect, giving them a say in stuff that affects them.
And it's not just the words, right? It's your tone, your body language. It all sends a message.
Oh, tell me about it. Sometimes my tone just totally betrays me. Even when I'm trying to say the right thing, my, like, inner teenager comes out all sarcastic and exasperated.
Been there. But being mindful of all that nonverbal stuff, it's huge. Approaching it calmly, respectfully, it just sets a way better tone for everybody.
It's like we're showing them how to communicate, the way we want them to learn.
100%. Which brings us to something else that's super important. Helping boys develop what's called emotional literacy.
I've heard that term, but I'm not sure I totally get it. What does that actually look like, in real life?
It's basically being able to know what you're feeling, but also how to handle those feelings. And just as important, it's about understanding how other people are feeling and reacting in a way that makes sense.
So it's more than just happy or sad. It's having a whole vocabulary for all the stuff going on inside.
Exactly. And we, as parents, as the grown-ups in their lives, we have a big role to play here. We can help them build that emotional vocabulary by, like, making feelings a regular part of our conversations.
Instead of just, how was your day? Which, let's be real, usually just gets a grunt.
Right. Try asking, what was something that made you feel proud today? Was there anything that made you feel frustrated? It's about making feelings a normal part of life, not something to hide or pretend isn't happening.
And I bet that's especially important for boys because, they get that message so often that certain feelings like being sad or showing vulnerability, those aren't okay for them to express.
It's tough, isn't it? All those messages about toughen up or be a man, it can be so damaging. And it's on us to fight back against that, to create a space where they feel safe, to just be themselves, to feel all their feelings.
This makes me think about how important our own emotional intelligence is, as the adults. If we're not comfortable with our own emotions, how can we expect them to be?
Such a good point. Our own self-awareness, how we manage our own feelings, it sets the stage for our sons. If we model healthy emotional expression, that's a huge gift we're giving them.
Whoa, a lot to think about. It's like we're really digging into what it actually means to raise boys with healthy self-esteem, and it's so much more than just telling them they're awesome.
It's a deep dive for sure. And in our next segment, We're going to tackle one of the most powerful tools we have, praise. But not just any kind of praise. We're talking about the specific, genuine stuff that focuses on what they're trying to do, not just the end result.
Okay, I am hooked. We've covered so much already, but I'm ready to hear what Dr. Cho has to say about this praise thing. Because I think we all want to know, like, how do we praise our kids in a way that really, truly builds them up?
Okay, so we're back, and I'm ready to crack the code on this whole praise thing. I mean, we all praise our kids, right? But I have a feeling there's like a real strategy to it, especially when we're talking about boosting a boy's self-esteem.
You're so right. It's not just about like throwing compliments around. Dr. Cho, he's really big on this idea of praise that's specific and genuine. And he says it should focus more on the effort they're putting in rather than just the outcome, like whether they succeeded or not.
Okay, I'm all in. But what does that actually sound like? Like, what's an example of that specific, genuine praise? Give me something I can use. Okay, think about it this way. Instead of just saying, good job, which can feel kind of, empty, try something like, wow, you were so focused when you were building that Lego tower. I could tell you were really concentrating.
Ah, so you're pointing out the actual behavior you like, the focus, the concentration, not just the tower itself. It's about noticing the process, not just the product.
Exactly. And it has to be real. Kids
Mhm.
can totally tell when we're just saying stuff to make them feel good, and that can actually backfire.
So no cheesy over-the-top stuff. It has to come from a real place. It's not about tricking them into feeling good. It's about genuinely appreciating their effort.
And here's where it gets even cooler. Dr. Cho suggests taking it a step further and actually linking that praise to something about who they are, like their character. So, say your son is learning to ride a bike and he keeps falling, right?
Mhm.
Instead of, don't worry, you'll get it, try something like, I know it's frustrating, but you're not giving up. I'm so proud of how hard you're trying. And then take it one step further and connect it to a character trait. You're such a determined person, you never give up easily.
Oh, that's good. It's not just about the action. It's about helping him see the good stuff inside him that's making him do that action.
Exactly. And when we do that consistently, when we link praise to those internal qualities, we're helping boys build a stronger sense of self-worth that goes way beyond what they achieve. They start to understand that they're valuable because of who they are, not just what they do.
This is really making me think about how I praise. I think I've gotten so caught up in the outcomes, like the good grades, the winning the game,
Hmm.
that I've missed those smaller everyday moments where they're showing effort and character.
And those moments are huge. Dr. Cho says to make praise a regular thing, not just something you save for the big wins. Look for those little things, the effort, the kindness, the creativity, and call it out.
So even if it's something small, like helping out with a chore or drawing a picture they're proud of, those are all chances to like reinforce those good behaviors and build up their self-esteem.
You got it. It's all about sending that message that you see them, that you value them, that you're paying attention to the stuff they're doing well, and that makes a huge difference.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. We've talked about so much. Understanding that need for recognition, the power of praise, and how to make it really count. I feel like I have a whole new playbook for like navigating this whole parenting thing.
And as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with a question, something to really think about. How do you think all those expectations we have as a society, those gender stereotypes, how do those affect boys and their self-esteem? It's something to keep in mind as you go on this parenting journey.
That's such a good point. We've talked about how we can make a difference, but we can't forget about all those messages they're getting from the world around them too. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you got something out of it, some ideas to try, some new ways of thinking. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep filling those cups.